Hi, guys. Welcome to this yoga philosophy webinar. Super happy that you guys are here. I am always a little bit surprised when people are interested in listening to these concepts. In my yoga career and experience, it took me a long time to start to actually digest those concepts and apply them to my life. And once I started to do that, I was like, "Oh my God, how had I been living before?" They are so incredibly useful, so incredibly helpful as we try to navigate these waters of our lives and all the challenges that come our way and these waves that we have to go through. There is something about, I think, most spiritual traditions will have that. They speak to our hearts. They speak to us about something that is not of the material world, or it's not of okay, let's just collect some goods, get some money, buy some things, build a career, have a reputation, have friends, go for drinks. All these things that our lives are so incredibly filled with, they are all of the material world. And as much pleasure as they can bring us, there is something in us, in our blueprint as human beings that is not material. That at least is the starting point of every philosophical tradition. And therefore, there has to be something that speaks to us on this level if we are to be able to have the tools to navigate and to find not only solutions to our problems, which is, of course, something we all want, but also a sense of purpose, which, if you look around the world nowadays, I find there is something that terribly lacks a sense of there is something more to my life than my work and my family and my the things that I surround myself with. There is an interior life. There is an interior connection to something that is so much bigger, so much wider, and that actually makes life so much more fulfilling and pleasant. And it's appalling how much that lacks and how much that leaves us lost. And as the more lost that we get, the more we try to look for the material things that could fulfill. So, there is a hunger. I always say that there is a hunger in us that cannot be fulfilled with food. And because we keep on trying. We feel this hunger, but the only thing that is available to us, like ready available, is another cuisine and another restaurant and another something and another recipe, and we keep on trying to fill this hunger with material things, or maybe with it's not food, but maybe it's just having amazing pairs of shoes, endless pairs of shoes. Or I used to have something with lipsticks. I don't know. I used to go into and find a lipstick and say, "Oh yeah, that's the lipstick. That's the lipstick that is gonna change my life and make all the difference in the world." And then, of course, within a week, it's rolling at the bottom of my bag together with all the other lipsticks I got before. There is a thirst in us that we cannot quench with just, physical things, wine or whatever cocktails that we can think of. There is a need inside of us for something that cannot be fulfilled with material things. And unless we recognize this need and we look for the fulfilling of this need in more interesting places or more places that can actually give us what we're looking for, our lives is going to be just as Patanjali says, it's like this desperate search, scrambling for. It's Vivekananda who says that, like life will offer us a handful of pearls, and like crazy, we scramble and we fight each other for those couple of pearls instead of looking into this immense treasure of pearls that is available to all of us in another level. So not on the physical pearls, on the physical riches, but the non-material ones. I try always to avoid words like spiritual, philosophical, metaphysical, because people get scared from it. I don't really know why. I think we are a little messed up somehow in our heads. We got a little messed up with religion and with spirituality and with metaphysics. We got a little suspicious and we got a little cynical. Our Western mind is very much about proof and scientific proof and and material proof of everything that we want to experience, and everything that is of a different nature. There is this embryologist I love, Jaap van der Wouw, and he says, you cannot prove the unprovable. You cannot ponder over the unponderable. So we try to look for material proof in places where material proof is not available. We need to look for a different kind of sensitivity that will lead us into the right direction. So I try to avoid these words. I try to think like, if you are into philosophy at all, there is a couple of things I want to tell you. The philosophy, yoga philosophy, it's the place where I found my answers. I believe that there are in numerous other schools and religions and traditions that can offer a lot of solace and a lot of depth and a lot of meaning to our lives. I found my own in a yoga philosophy like in nothing before. There is something incredibly non-dogmatic about it, and incredibly rich and elegant about the way that those ideas are presented and offered to us as tools. It's also very functional. You know, yoga philosophy offers us gazillions of ways. If this way doesn't work for you, try this one, try this one, try this one. Everybody's welcome. All religions are welcome. So yoga philosophy is a place where I found my resources, the resources that keep me inspired and keep me connected. And there is something incredibly powerful about it. It's not only in yoga, but it's definitely present there. It's not something intellectual. I always try to say that. I think when I say like, oh, let's do a yoga philosophy workshop, everybody feeling it's not like Western philosophy that tends to be an intellectual exercise, which can be very beautiful too, for sure. But yoga philosophy is all about the heart. It's all about learning to connect and feel what is going on in your heart, and honoring that, and not pushing it aside, not making a drama out of it, but to actually connect with your heart and try to find in your heart the ways and the places that you can actually open up. So this is a little bit of an introduction just to explain that for me, yoga philosophy is really about life, about trying to find the meaning and the beauty and the inspiration and the joy and the light and all the things that make life worthwhile. And for sure, you know, it doesn't take away from having a great material life too, if that's your thing. You know, by all means, I enjoy good food and laughter and, you know, looking good if that's your thing. But it's just understanding that those things, as pleasant and as fun and as delicious as they can be, they cannot fill all the gaps. And the moment that we try to make those things fill all the gaps, we fall into our patterns of behavior. We fall into this kind of desperately scrambling for the little thing that's going to give me a 5-minute pleasure. So it's, again, yoga philosophy is not a negation of the physical world. There are schools that do negate the physical world, that will actually suggest to us that, you know, the physical world should be negated completely. The school of yoga, especially Patanjali school of yoga, does not do that. It absolutely understands that the physical body is a manifestation, a vehicle for our spirit, but it's a vehicle for the spirit, and it should be honored and treated as such. And the spirit needs to be brought to life as well. Not brought to life because it's never not there, but we need to nourish it. We need to bring it up towards our daily lives, if possible. So that's a little bit of a introduction to it. You're going to have all the time to ask your questions at the end. You can write them down now if you don't want to forget, but I will just continue. Patanjali has something incredibly sharp. I have to tell you that I started studying Patanjali, my very first teacher training. That was 1998. That was a long time ago. I started doing yoga in 1996, and my first teacher training started in 1998. It was a 3-year teacher training, and we started studying Patanjali right away. And I keep on studying it, and there are still things for me that are incredibly obscure, but slowly concepts that are intellectual at first, they start to kind of click into place. You start to find that those concepts, they actually move with you, with your breath, with your heart. They move with your actions and with your intentions and your intuitions. So the beautiful thing, the first thing that I was impressed by Patanjali was his sharpness of mind. just how incredibly sharp and he doesn't need a lot of words to explain things, and sometimes that's a problem because you just don't understand what he means. The word sutra in itself, sutra is actually a thread. And the meaning of the Sutras of Patanjali is that a thread carries, beads, gems. There are gems of wisdom, and they are strung into this thread like a necklace. And we need to actually take that one gem and then study it, observe it, look at it, try to unpack all this information. So his sharpness of mind and his succinctness, if you can say that word, it's a word that means that he really manages to speak of incredibly complex things with very few words, needs to be elaborated. And that's why every Yoga Sutras of Patanjali book that you're going to buy, the sutras themselves, they're not very many. They're 190, a little bit over 190. They're not very long, and you're done pretty easy. But if you just grab them and you read them, you don't understand anything. Unless you are a genius and you've done this many lifetimes before. For most of us, it's a completely, But even reading a second time already gives you a couple of hints every now and again. But you're going to need a teacher. You're going to need a commentary. That's why everybody who makes a comment on yoga, on Patanjali, that's why the books end up being really big. It's not because of the sutras themselves, but the explanations of the sutras. And he starts already right into the heart of the matter. He starts, the first sutra of Patanjali is, now we're going to talk about yoga. That's a way that, because all these works of yoga, they not used to be written. They used to be chanted by people. So, if you chant the Gita and you chant the sutras, you have to have one sentence of introduction to tell you what we're going to chant about now. So the first sutra just says, now we're going to talk about yoga. And then right away, the second sentence that he gives you, the second sutra, if you will, gives us a definition of what yoga is, which is incredible. I mean, I've been interviewed, by people sometimes, and you're like, well, how do you define yoga? And I always go like, I have no idea. How do you define yoga? But Patanjali has no problem whatsoever. And he defines yoga in actually 4 words. And you need to unpack each one of these words to be able to have an understanding of what he means. And first he says yoga, chitta, vritti, nirodha. That's his definition of yoga. It has 4 words. One of them is yoga. So he's using 3 words to define what yoga is. Chitta, it's the first word. Yoga, chitta, vritti, nirodha. Chitta it's your consciousness. It gets translated many times as mind, your mind. It's fine. I like the sense of field of consciousness, because our mind, some people think, what's your mind? It's some little place inside your head, and your field of consciousness is way vaster than that. So chitta is the field of your consciousness. Everything that ever happened to you, everything that is happening to you right now is happening within this field. If it's not within this field, you don't perceive it. So the field of your perception, the field of your consciousness is chitta. And then vritti is an amazing word. Actually, it means whirlpool. The literal translation of the word vritti means whirlpool. So it's something that pulls the energy, that is going to trap energy and pull it. And what he's talking about is anything that you become aware of in this field of your chitta, in this field of your consciousness, everything that you become aware of is a little vritti or a big vritti. Anything at all, anything you become aware of. It could be like, oh, my knee hurts a little bit, or my belt is out of the way, or there is a fly going about, or my heart is breaking. It could be something emotional and huge, and it could be something completely, unimportant and transcendent and transient. So whatever it is that you become aware of in this field of your consciousness, that is a vritti. And I repeat, it could be anything at all. It could be trivial, or it could be life-changing. It could be physical, when we sit. Normally, you have to understand something about the Sutras of Patanjali that people don't understand, is that it is a manual for meditation. It's, of course, going to help us a lot in life as well, because most of the things that you meet in meditation, all of the things that you meet in meditation, you're going to meet in your daily life as well, in hidden ways or more diluted ways maybe. But it is actually a manual for meditation. And what he's saying is that when you sit with yourself, and you close your eyes, or you don't close your eyes, you watch whatever your technique is, what you're going to be aware of, the first thing that's going to be there for you are all the vrittis that show up, all the things that you are aware of. My back hurts, it's really warm in here, no, it's really light in here, I need something around, I know it's really cold, well, the neighbor is making a little bit of noise, and oh my God, what time is it, how long has it passed, this is ridiculous, I should know, come on, breathe in, breathe out. Everything that you think about is a vritti. It's a whirlpool trapping energy and moving it around. So yoga, chitta, vritti, and then the key word is nirodha. And nirodha gets a lot translated as control. So just being just this effort of controlling something. Again, which is fine. I think it's sometimes nice to go for the simplest translation. And so the whole sentence, yoga, chitta, vritti, nirodha, gets a lot translated as yoga is controlling the movements or the fluctuations in your mind. That's like the most common translation you're going to find. But again, I find that sometimes it's nice to be a little bit more open-minded. I think that nirodha includes more meanings than just a control. Nirodha is the capacity to influence something in the direction you want it to go, which sounds a lot like control, but it's a little bit more subtle. I always think in terms of a horse. You know, if you have a horse and you want to control the horse, or if you're actually going like, come on, I want you to go that direction. No, we're not going to go there. You're not overly aggressive, but you're also not overly passive. So nirodha is this influencing, this capacity to, it also the concept of stilling, of calming down, it's also there in nirodha. Calm me down. Then take it where you want it to go. Which again, control comes close to these ideas, but it just opens our mind and our feeling maybe to a bit of a more wide perspective. So what Patanjali is saying is that yoga is the capacity to direct your consciousness where you want it to go. So if all these vrittis appear in your life, you decide, I don't want to go with, the vritti of my knee, the vritti of my neighbor, the vritti of how hot it is or how cold it is, or the vritti of what time it is. I want to go with the vritti of my breath, let's say. You choose. The breath that you are focusing on, or whatever technique of meditation you're using, is also a vritti. But you are choosing, you're nirodhaing, if you will. You're nirodhaing the vritti that you wish to focus on. And that is Patanjali's definition of yoga. Which is, for us, like, wow, it's not Chaturanga Dandasana. It's not sun salutation. It's not handstands. It's not warrior one. No. That comes later. Those are all tools to do yoga, chitta vritti nirodha. Those are all tools for that. The controlling your body is fundamental to nirodha your vrittis. Because if your body is weak, or if your body is tired all the time, or if your body is too stiff, it's going to be very hard for you to have any control of your mind, because you're going to be constantly busy with your body. My body hurts, my body needs, I'm hungry, I'm tired, I'm sleepy, I'm cold, all these physical vrittis are going to be all there all the time. You need to be able to bypass them. And how do you bypass your body? By training it. By learning to be a little uncomfortable on purpose, which is what yoga practice is, right? Let's move a little bit. Let's be able to ignore the little discomfort here and there. So these physical practices, they are tools towards the bigger goal, which is to control your mind, pretty much. You could say that yoga is learning to have control over your mind, over what is happening, not so much the mind itself, because this field cannot be controlled, but the whirlpools that are happening within this field. These whirlpools, if you go with each whirlpool, that's what your life is going to be. And actually, that's what we see in the world right now. that most of our lives is going from one whirlpool to another. The whirlpool of my job and my problems, or my family is now, or I don't have enough money, or my health is not going well, or I want to go out and I want to have a good time. Those whirlpools are constantly pulling us, and this is our lives. We just move, our energy keeps on being moved from one whirlpool to another. And what Patanjali is suggesting is that if we want to do yoga, and we're going to talk about that in a moment, if we want to go deeper than this material world, this whirlpool, we're going to have to make a choice of which whirlpool you're actually going to invest some time and energy, and which whirlpool you are going to swipe left, I think it's called, which whirlpool you're just going to ignore, sweat it out of your life. So having control of what is happening in your head is the pure definition of yoga. And then he continues and he says, if you can do that, if you can control your attention and you can move it away from the things that are bothering you constantly and constantly moving you into these patterns of behavior, which we're going to talk about in a second too. If you can take your energy, get out of here and focus, inhale, go down to your heart. I'm just saying one technique that I do all the time. Exhale up. Just this. Oh, but I'm really cold. Inhale into the heart. Exhale up. But my knees are. Inhale into the heart. Exhale up. It's been already 15 minutes. Inhale to the heart. You just swipe away those vrittis and you stick to the one thing that you choose. If you can do that for a long time, we awaken to our true nature, which is the promise of yoga. The promise of yoga is that we are made of light and love. This is our true nature, and bliss and joy, everlasting, infinite. This is our original state. And we have devolved into the state that we are right now. And the only thing that we need to do is find this evolutionary way back. And to do that, you're going to have to temporarily, at least, shut down the stuff that is constantly pulling you out of it. And if you spend time and you calm yourself enough, it's a lot about calmness, of finding this calmness, this silence inside of you. And if you spend some time in there and you really invest your energy and your chi and your time into these places, you will awaken to an internal world that is unimaginable for us. It's the joy and the bliss and the light that you can experience in these places leaves our, material pleasures far, far away. That's the promise of yoga, is that if you temporarily, because our minds are now, we have devolved, according to yoga, that's already something maybe interesting to mention. Western science talks about evolution from the very basic to this amazing state that we are now. So we were first, just gases and elements, and then we became one-celled beings, and then one-celled beings evolved into multiple-celled beings, and slowly, over millions and millions of years, we became this amazingness that is us. But yoga talks about a devolution. Yoga says that we were divine, perfect, completely perfect, unique in our own signature. There is an individuality there that has nothing to do with ego. For us, it's hard to imagine, but there is a uniqueness to our consciousness, but completely unified into the original consciousness, the consciousness of God, of the divine, of the first consciousness, the major consciousness of love and light, which is the origin of everything. And through a huge process of devolution, we arrived at the messy state that we are now. So there are two completely different ways to look at it. The beautiful thing I find from the yoga perspective is that it's showing us there was a devolution. And it immediately, once you open yourself to that possibility, you realize that you can find the way back. Because if you descended, you can ascend also back. So that's what Patanjali is suggesting to us. He's saying that the way to get into this path back is inward. we are not going to find that here. You're going to have to let it go temporarily, every day a little bit. You let it out. You close the ears to the neighbors, to the heat and the cold, to the hunger and you close everything for a moment. All the senses. The senses are our doors to the outside world. That's why a lot about yoga is controlling of the senses, because the senses are looking for vrittis all the time. The senses are going like, well, what's going on over there? And over there. It's like, what's going on over here? Let's a little scratch a little bit. We're constantly looking for something out there. That's the function of the senses. They are portals to the outside world. A child, when a child is born, a child starts to interact with the world through the senses. In the beginning, they are this little internal ball, but immediately the eyes and the ears and the sense of touch, the skin and the smells, they start to, and of course the mouth, they start to play a role. So yogis are saying you're going to have to close these doors for a little while. And then focus on what is happening inside of you for a long time. So Nirodha needs to be practiced. Patanjali also says that regularly and over a long period of time. It's not like, okay, I meditated today for 20 minutes. Where's my enlightenment? I call that a vending machine model of life. I put my coin in there and I just want to get my reward out there. Doesn't work like that. And I think that's one of the reasons that yoga philosophy and yoga practice and meditation, those things are so hard for people, because we are so hooked into instant reward. We want our reward right now. We have things to do. We have places to be. I need to get my stuff right now. And it's very hard for us, this idea that you're going to have to invest a lot of energy and a lot of time and a lot of love into something that you're not going to see, a result you're not going to see for a long, long time. But I always ask my students, what is the alternative? Is to keep on scrambling for those couple of pearls out there. So Patanjali is suggesting this is going to give you riches you cannot believe. And I have to tell you that in my own life, I have experienced that, even though I'm not enlightened and I have not yet have, this experience of samadhi, which is the highest consciousness experience. But you start to develop an inner world, a world where you can find love at any time. Not when somebody else loves you, but when you connect with the heart and you can find light and comfort and guidance and support all the time. It's right there inside of you. And don't get me wrong, I keep on losing it. Because you were like, oh, but what is it? And then, oh yeah, it's not there. I have to close that. It's in there. It's a way that we don't travel much, the way inward. It's not taught at school. It's not taught at home. We have to, and then we keep forgetting it. Also, there is something important to understand. Patanjali talks a lot about samskaras. And samskaras are patterns of behavior that we have been developing over, yogis believe, lifetimes. So patterns of behavior that we are completely hooked into. And it's beautiful to see how if you look a little bit into neuroscience and what the new sciences are talking about right now, that 95% of our choices and our actions in this world are determined by our pre-programmed minds, which yogis just change the word and say samskaras. Our samskaras, our patterns of behavior, our pre-programmed mind are determining 95% of our choices and our behavior and our life, which is scary. And that's why we engage in it, so we keep on losing. Even if you manage to make this tenuous connection with something inside your heart, the next moment something huge happens in your life and you lose it. And your pre-programmed mind takes over. You have to keep on going back. No, shut it off for a moment. Go inside. Look into yourself. Try to shut these vrittis. Choose one vritti. And slowly start to develop this inner world that it's the other 5%. It's the world of creativity, the world of the present moment, not of the pre-programmed mind that is always in the past, always repeating something that is in the past. There is something in you that is right here and right now. And it's full of love, and it's full of light, and it's full of possibilities. And it's your soul. It's the center of your being. It's what brought you here. You have a reason to be here. There is a place in this universe that can only be fulfilled by your soul, like a little piece of a puzzle. There is nothing else in the world that can be filled but you. If you are in the pre-programmed mind, you're never in touch with that. You're just, repeating behavior. And it's very strong and very powerful. And because we are all doing it, it becomes even harder to step out of it. That's the power, of communities, of sanghas. Sanghas is the Sanskrit word for a community, of trying to find people who feel alike, who have the same kind of aspirations. That's what makes slowly a difference in our lives. I've been talking for half an hour. I just want to say one more thing about Patanjali, because I think it's you cannot talk about Patanjali and not talk about that, which are the 8 limbs of yoga. I'm not going to go in detail over them, but Patanjali drew out a system of, he said there are 8 levels in which you have to practice this nirodha, this control, this influencing, this practice of bringing your attention where you want it to go. He says, you can do it like in your body really well, or your diet really well. I'm not going to eat that, I'm going to be, but if your mind is still going that places, it's not going to be enough. But if your mind is all very illuminated and thinking beautiful things, but you're always eating, that's also not going to work. So he actually made a map, the 8 limbs of yoga. And I love the word limbs, because it's not 8 steps. It's not like first you do that, then you do that, and then you do that, and then you do that, and then when you get here, you're done. It's not like that. It's like 8 limbs of a tree. They have to happen at the same time in our lives. Because even after you achieve the highest communion, let's say that you are lucky, or that you work really hard and it's in your karma, and you're going to achieve this highest consciousness, chances are the next day you're still going to have to go to work and deal with people in the traffic and with your boss. And if you immediately get pulled back into like, yesterday I was in samadhi, you don't understand, then you just go down all the way back. So we need to learn and to be kind to each other, and to be kind to ourselves, and to control our impulses, and to be clean, and to be content, and to control our senses, and to control our breath, and to be strong in our bodies, and to be able to focus our minds. All these things have to be a living practice. That's why yoga is so fantastic and so rich. It's not only doing an hour of physical exercise. It's doing the physical exercise and then paying attention what's going on in your heart as you do that. Paying attention in your breath, paying attention when someone is giving you bad news, what's happening in your breath. How does your heart react when you think a certain thought? The 8 limbs of yoga are an incredibly helpful path for us to follow, for us to have a guideline. Some people say, the very first one, which is nonviolence, it's the hardest one of all. You can spend a lifetime just doing that, because we are violent in so many different ways, in ourselves and with each other. But I do believe that it's the beauty of it is this kind of limb, this kind of tree-like effort of spiraling in different directions inside of you, and letting your practice kind of spread out into your life in whatever way that we can in this life. Of course, we all have our own shortcomings and our own karma to deal with, but there is a lot of goodness that we can do in this life. And Patanjali has understood the nature of our challenges, and has understood the tools that we can have at our disposal at any time beautifully, amazingly. And I do think that his work is today at least as relevant as it was then, if not more. We are at the moment in a crossroad. In yogis talk a lot about yoga. It's the last thing I'm going to say, and then I'm going to let you ask your questions if you want to. Yogis talk a lot about the Yuga theory, not the yoga, but the Yuga theory. The Yuga theory, if you're interested, you can look on YouTube, the Great Year. And it's according to this theory, we live cycles of 24,000 years, 12,000 years of ascension, and then 12,000 years of descent. So the darkest part of this time, it's called the dark age. It's an age of complete materialistic identification. We are very materialistic, very identified with the body and with material things. And we reached that bottom around 700 AD. And then we start a painfully slow, 12,000 years slow way of rising up. And then we get to the golden age. And the golden age is an age of complete spiritual awakening. And then after a long, long time there, that's beautiful. The golden age is way longer than the dark age, but it also comes to an end, as everything does. And then it starts this descent back down of 12,000 years. And we have just left this darkest of ages in the 1900s, actually. So we are in a place that we are still vibrating with a lot of ignorance and a lot of material identification. You can see that everywhere, how our lives, but there is a lot of energy already. There are lots of people talking about amazing things already. We are aware of energies, like we are, the internet has taken us by storm. What is that? It's vibrational energy, vibrational healing. There is a lot of vibrational energies already starting to enter our lives, but we are still in there is a lot of residue of extreme ignorance, extreme material identification and ignorance. And exactly in this time of transition, in this time there is, this dark and light constantly, we need something that inspires us and guides us and helps us be loving and be kind to each other and to ourselves. That's why, I have a mission with yoga philosophy. Whoever wants to listen to it in whatever way, I am glad to talk about it, because any tiny little bit of difference that we can make, I think it's worth it. And I don't think you have to believe in a reincarnation. I don't think you have to believe even in a divinity. The only thing that we need to know is that we are here to bring light and love. And we are here to make our little corner of the world as beautiful and as good as we can make it. And yoga philosophy really, really can help us in that way, in my experience. All right. That is my spiel for today. If you guys have any questions, I will be more than happy to try and answer them. Teresa says, tiny bit of difference. Beautiful, Anat. Thank you. Thanks, Teresa. I'm glad. Just waiting for your questions. Thank you, Carol. And thank you, Gloria. You're Brazilian? What book is a good one to start with? That's always a good question, and always a very hard one to answer. There are 3 versions of Patanjali that I like very much. The very first one it's not the very first one, but one of the first ones that I read, and is the one by Vivekananda. I am a huge fan of Vivekananda, and Vivekananda is a very radical thinker from last century. He is, of course, already gone from this earth. He has his own very specific translation or commentary, and it's very powerful, and it brings you into, it's not very academic in the sense that, for instance, there is another one by a guy called Christopher Chappell, CHAPPLE. And he's much more academic. He's going to show you the translation of the sutra, and then there's going to be a commentary. It's much more. Vivekananda just goes in his own thing, but sometimes it works because it just makes it so much more understandable, so much more just immediately makes an imprint in your head. So for me, it was great to read him at a time when I was not very familiar with the sutras themselves. Edwin Bryant has a great, beautiful, beautiful work also. I would recommend his, and Christopher Chappell. Those are the three works of the sutras that I like the most. So Vivekananda, I think it's called Raja Yoga. Christopher Chappell and Edwin Bryant. This is for the Yoga Sutras. I'm a huge Patanjali, Bhagavad Gita fan too. And I find, to be honest with you, I find maybe even more inspiration in the Gita than I do in Patanjali. Both of them are amazing, but the Gita is just like, and Eknath Esvaran. Good luck with that. Eknath Esvaran. I think it's Esvaran. He has a very beautiful translation of the Gita, as does Yogananda himself. Also, I am being asked to tell you that we have, of course, an introduction to Patanjali course here at EkhartYoga, and that's going to be given being sold by a discount this couple of days. I'm not very good with shop talk. Okay, let's see. Thank you. Will you do yoga asana while you teach the class on EkhartYoga? I don't exactly know what you mean. You mean now? We're not doing asana now. But teach a lot of asana here at EkhartYoga. Lots of classes here. I try to put a little bit of philosophy in the classes as well. It's kind of what I try to do, but they are pretty physical. Hi Anat, do you know if the teachings of the Yoga Sutras are the same as the Buddha teachings Dhammapada? No, there are lots of similarities though, but there are also a couple of major differences. So both the Patanjali and the Buddhist teachings are based on Sankhya. Sankhya was this philosophy, one of the 6 schools of Indian philosophy at the time. So there is a lot of, karma and samskaras, and even concepts of like the gunas. There is a lot of things that are associated. But yoga is, the Yoga Sutras are really go towards yoga. And then Buddhism took their own path. So they both come from Sankhya, and they have a lot of commonalities, much more than differences. But there are a couple of basic differences too. For instance, yoga is theistic. It does recognize a divinity, and Buddhism doesn't, although it's highly spiritual in many ways. So there are a couple of subtle but fundamental differences. Oh, thank you. I am so interested in this, but definitely need someone to break this all down. Yeah, join the club. This is impossible on your own. I even think that it's very hard only with a book. Maybe if you're very nerdy, very, very introspective, you can do it. Having a teacher is definitely makes it a lot easier. Again, we have here at EkhartYoga 2 short courses on yoga philosophy. We're probably going to make more. I teach the Gita also around the world, but there are lots of great teachers around. If you are interested in this, really go look for them. There are many very good teachers around, and those teachings are really worth your while. This was such a wonderful explanation where you're talking about the Kali Yuga. What comes after that? I think it's called Dvapara Yuga. We are now in the Dvapara. It's the first ascending one, and then there is another one that I forget now, sorry, which is the next ascending one, and then we get into the golden age, the Satya Yuga, which is really long. It's like 4,000 years long. The Kali Yuga is 1,200 years long, and apparently we've been through this cycle many times for millions of years. So as horrible as it all looks right now, I try to remind myself always, like, we've been here before and we are going to get better. I'm overwhelmed by all your wisdom. Oh, thank you. What says Patanjali about life and death? That's such a good question. He talks a lot about reincarnation, about samskaras from past lives. So he's definitely in that trend, as all yoga philosophy is. So that's mostly what he talks about. There is a lot of that, of being able, but he says actually super interestingly that if you get yourself into deep states of meditation, you can work through the samskaras even of your next lives. You can get rid of stuff even that is going to come afterwards. He talks a lot about the fear of death. That is something that is very common. So here and there you have some things about life and death, but I think he's talking mostly about our efforts to overcome our vrittis, to overcome our samskaras in this life. Give Vivekananda a try. He's so good. Please do. Hope you have more of these. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, the Gita is incredible. How do we deal with ignorance? If people are very annoying around you and ignorance would be the only way to deal with, but ignorance should be avoided. I think this is the $1 million question. I struggle with this one every day. How do you deal with ignorance? Because you cannot force anybody into the light as much as you may want to. You cannot, everybody has their own path. And it's not an excuse not to fight for what is right. You need to shed your light and stand for what you believe with all your conviction and but it needs to be from a place of love. Otherwise, we fall back into what we call the cycle of samsara, the cycle of suffering. When we get hooked by violence, when we get hooked by hatred, by anger, Krishna in the Gita says anger is one of, if not the biggest enemy of man, of women, of people. If we get hooked by it, and it's so hard not to, we become them. We become ignorant as well. So I think if it would be easy, it would not be as fundamental. To deal with ignorance, to look at ignorance, to fight it, but fight it from a place of love and understanding and light, and not to become your enemy, not to mirror what the ignorant people are doing. I think this is the path of the warrior. This is the path of the yoga warrior, the warrior of compassion. You're fighting for what is right, but you're doing from a place of love and compassion. And sometimes you need to be hard. Sometimes you need to be strict, but you're not doing that for your own selfish, which is so subtle. It's impossible. That it's not impossible, but it's so hard. Because you sometimes you need to, I have these classes here. You need to swing your sword. You need to cut ignorance. You need to shoot your arrow. You need to do it, but you're not doing it out of hatred. You're doing it out of love. And we need to find ways where that makes sense to us every day, again and again and again. It's a tough one. Sorry if I cannot give you a better advice. Thank you for all this. It was wonderful. Inner calm. How to ground oneself back. It's incredible. It's incredible sometimes when I am meditating. I start some days of meditation and my breath is so hectic and my mind is all over the place. And I think to myself, this is pointless and never going to happen today. Let it go. But I have made a commitment with myself that I'm going to go until the timer stops. And literally 10 times out of 10, there is a moment when things calm down. If you keep at your breath, if you keep your vritti, even if there are thousands of other vrittis screaming in your head, you keep that one vritti, breathe in, breathe out, or whatever vrittis work, or your mantra, just stick to it. There is a moment, it's almost like magic, it's like, whoa. And that calmness is fundamental. I didn't speak much about that, but that calmness, that inner calmness, is a superpower. It's fundamental if we are to have some degree of contact inside. We need to calm down. But meditation really does it. Someone has me a Krita, Tetra, Dvapara, and Kali. Thank you. It's not Krita, it's Satya, no? Satya, Treta, Dvapara, and Kali. At least that's how I know them. But thank you. That's the 4 stages. Once a section. Arigato. Thank you. Would you give next year a TT about philosophy? Sure. I'm giving this year a Gita workshop in November in Portugal. Philosophy is always part of our TTs. I would love to give a TT only on philosophy, but as I tell you, it's hard to get people massively interested in it. But I'm totally open for it. I love it. Even there are 5 people there, I'm happy. Yes, learning alone is tough. I already left a comment on your intro course, but I say it again. Thanks for presenting the info like you do. Applying this knowledge so every day can be, it's so tough. But it's the reason we are here. To learn to apply those concepts into our daily lives, I believe, is the reason we are here. Nothing else is more important than that. Thank you, Anat. The Gita Hindu text, so definitely a religious text, but the sutras are not directly linked to Hinduism. Would you agree? I'm not a scholar to answer this question properly. What I can tell you is that it's a yoga text. No, it's maybe not related to Hinduism, but it's related to yoga. And he does talk about Ishvara. There is one sutra when he actually mentions Ishvara. It's one of the ways that you can practice meditation is by devotion to Ishvara, which is in the Hinduistic pantheon. So it's not very, Patanjali took a lot of that out. I agree with you completely. But there is a tiny little bit in there. But again, a scholar probably is going to give you a better answer than I can. Thank you for sharing. Thank you. This was so engaged. Do you offering any other live webinars? We don't have anything planned, but hopefully. Thank you, guys. Beautiful comments. Thank you so much. If you guys are all happy, I'm happy too. Thank you so much. We're definitely going to keep on producing whatever content we can. I think it's, as I said before, one of the most important things we can do. And thank you so much for coming here. I appreciate it from my heart. Cannot tell you how much. Thank you. Namaste. Yes.